Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Wildcard Devy podcast. You will notice I am on my own this evening. There is no Jack here recording with me. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity to share with you a little bit of news. Jack's not here for a very, very good reason. Because we are introducing a brand new bouncing baby Buckeye to the world. Jack and his good partner, Emma, welcome baby Marnie into the world. So listen, just a quick moment from all of the Fantasy Wildcard team, and especially me, to say congratulations to you both. And we hope baby Marnie is safe, happy, healthy, and that everyone's recovering well. So rest up, Jack. Look forward to seeing you soon. Back to the football, and I think it is important that we focus on tonight's episode that I've called Things We Thought We Knew. Okay, we are now 7 weeks through college football. Week 8 is looming. And as a Devy community, there are an awful lot of things that we thought we knew going into the season. There were players we were high on. There were surefire hits and misses. We were in on this guy. We were out on that guy. So-and-so was going to tear it up. Do this with your draft picks. And now through 7 weeks of college football, we just wanted to check back in and see how some of those things looked. So that's how we're going to spend our time this evening together. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. Without further ado, let's dive right in then, okay? And the first thing we thought we knew as a Devy community coming into this season was that there was no consensus QB1 in the 2025 draft class. And through 7 weeks of college football, I think it's quite fair to say we are absolutely none the wiser who is going to take that crown of QB1. It feels like at the moment, all the kind of major name guys have had their moments, had their weeks, and are playing as well as each other with nobody really stealing the lead. So let's just touch base on a few of those names and think about how they're doing. First guy I'd really like to look at is Jalen Milroe. Obviously, Alabama quarterback. We have spoken about his potential upside and ceiling at length and talked about what he would have to do to be considered QB1 overall. And listen, in the offseason, I don't think anyone was thinking he would be. But over the last kind of 3 or 4 weeks, particularly after the Georgia game, people in the community were really banding his name around as, listen, this guy could be QB1 in the NFL draft, never mind for your fantasy drafts. He could be the 101 overall pick. And then we've had the last couple of weeks. Bama were upset by Vanderbilt, much to my horror and dismay. We were well, and listen, that wasn't Bama being bad. Like, let's give Vandy credit, okay? Bama weren't brilliant by their high expectations, but Vanderbilt have proven to be no slouches, and the whipping boys have been in previous years. Shout out to Diego Pavia. What a performance from him. But let's focus on Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe played well. He played well in the Vanderbilt game. And then this week just gone, he played against a mean South Carolina defensive pass rush and really had to think fast. Over the 2 games, a couple of those old habits have kind of popped up in terms of how long he holds the ball, but his passing is looking leaps and bounds above where it was last season, which is major, major, major for his NFL draft stock. And for you guys owning him as a Devy asset, because he's showing quick trigger releases. He's showing much more decisive reads, and his passing between the numbers has been excellent the last couple of weeks. He's now elevated firmly into that first round draft conversation. But I think most importantly, his biggest strength still is rushing. Elite athleticism, and when you watch, particularly his rushing touchdown this weekend against South Carolina, in the red zone, his rushing threat makes him a numbers changer. Sides really have to account for him and think about, can they afford to spy him? And it really creates headaches. And the RPO game worked to perfection down there in the red zone for Bama at the weekend, and Jalen Milroe's threat as a rusher is the main part of that and the kind of main protagonist. I think we've said we've compared him to Jalen Hurts, maybe a little bit of a lazy comparison in the fact that he's an Alabama quarterback, strong, athletic, mobile. He's a better rusher than them, than Jalen Hurts was. That's for certain. He's a more electric rusher. And people might start to compare him to Anthony Richardson. I know I said recently, like the absolute roller coaster ride that watching Anthony Richardson, when he's playing for the Colts at the moment, is that might be what you get in Jalen Milroe in the short term. But what shouldn't be forgotten is he has played a lot more football. He's played an awful lot more football than Anthony Richardson had at Florida by the time he was drafted. And we were high enough to take Anthony Richardson 4th overall. There's, Milroe's kind of stats and his numbers and the amount of football he's played is leaps and bounds above Richardson. And the upside is, whilst perhaps not quite as enticing in terms of the physical specimen, Milroe might be one of the best athletes in the draft this year. And so, look, he's going to be in that conversation. Moving on, I'm going to do my victory lap and my told you so while I talk about Cam Ward. I sat here on a solo pod in the summer and talked about why you should take a flyer on Cam Ward. Backed it up with the work I'd done last year on Jaden Daniels, and why Cam Ward was going to be the man this year. So imagine 7 weeks through the college football season when Cam Ward is absolutely on a tear, a Heisman front runner, and playing absolutely brilliant to bring Miami back to the forefront of the ACC conversation and the kind of national conversation as well. Like, he was absolutely unwavering in that week 6 comeback on the road at Cal. 25 points down heading into the fourth quarter. He didn't flinch. He stood firm and led them back to victory with a touchdown, taking the lead in the final minute. 35 of 53 on the road at Cal, 437 yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 interception, with another score on the ground in that fourth quarter. Absolutely clutch from a player who's coming up big in big moments. Again, next guy I want to talk about is Shedeur Sanders. I kind of figure, like, if you want to go viral, okay, if you want a social media post to take off, just mention Shedeur Sanders. That's what we did at the weekend after we acknowledged his really, really good performance against Kansas State, where he went 34 of 40 for 388 yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception. Look, we've been critical of Shedeur Sanders. Everyone knows we have. Everyone's heard it. When we say we've been critical, we asked questions about where he was being drafted in the summer. That's not to say we didn't think he had potential and promise. We simply asked, was he worthy of that kind of 101, 102 ADP with which he was being drafted in the summer? Well, look, based on last weekend's performance, you could argue, yeah, he's starting to live up to the hype. Some of his performances are starting to match the off-season hype, and we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't say as much. If we held to our priors and said he wasn't performing, and carried on slating him, we wouldn't be giving you guys the best service we can. I know that, the post we put on social media over the weekend's been viewed almost 100,000 times. More likes, more reposts than we've ever had on anything. And in the comments, people were talking about, well, he holds the ball too long. He can't do that in the NFL. He's going to get sacked. Yeah, look, I agree. I absolutely agree. But none of these prospects are perfect. And that is why they haven't set themselves apart to the level that Caleb had in last year's draft. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young had done the year before. But as college prospects, they were a lot more kind of marquee head of the class. It's why none of these guys have. They do have set themselves apart. They do have kind of some warts in their game that need cleaning up. And yeah, Shedeur Sanders holds the ball too long, but it is always with the intention of trying to make something happen. He's got an O-line that doesn't protect him. Let's just tell it how it is. Kansas State had 6 sacks at the weekend. He is still sacked an awful lot, and some of those are his fault, but not every single one is. Christ, that O-line, are made of wafer biscuits. Like, they just crumble. The second you put any pressure on them, they crumble. And Shedeur Sanders holds that ball in the pocket and does a good job of staying upright for a lot of the time because he is under so much duress. Look, it's time to give him props where it's due. Jack might not like it, but he's not here, so I can. Fair play to Shedeur Sanders. Next one I want to talk about is Carson Beck. Everybody's safe pick in this class, and we've said it over the last few weeks. Carson Beck isn't playing bad football. He is just not playing at the lights out level or a stock ascending level like some of his peers. I'm going to ask a question. You know how I am about player comps. I don't love them. But is Carson Beck the next Joe Flacco? It's sure as hell not a sexy comp. But over the last few weeks, you can see the parallels. He's put up some lofty passing numbers with a less than stellar receiving cast. He's got an unflappable style. When they went into the hole against Bama, he threw their way back into that game and really kind of brought them back into it. This weekend, just gone against Mississippi State. He was 36 of 48, a 75% completion rating with 459 yards. He's slinging it when he's got to. And I just look at how Joe Flacco has had a resurgent kind of dynasty career over the last kind of season or two with Cleveland last year and now at the Colts. And just wondering, it was never sexy having Joe Flacco as your QB1, but it could be effective. And is that the pathway that Carson Beck's going to be on in terms of his NFL future? Like I say, he's still firmly in that conversation, no doubt about it. Maybe just not hitting the lofty heights that some of his peers are. Quinn Ewers, back from injury, an awful lot to prove. 199 yards, 1 TD to 1 interception in the Red River rivalry game where Texas blew out Oklahoma 34-3. His momentum seems to be cooling just as others are heating up. He's certainly, in terms of where he was a few weeks ago after the Michigan win, he certainly seems to be a player not being mentioned now. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. So there you go. It is as clear as mud. I think it's fair to say that the things we thought we knew, that there was no consensus 2025 QB1, still very much feels like that. Okay, I think it's going to go down to flavor. I think it's going to go down to which team gets the number 1 pick in the draft. If Carolina get it, or do they trade it? Right now, it looks like the Browns would be in the position if the NFL season finished today. Do they trade it away and reinvest, or do they cut ties on Deshaun Watson? What type of QB would they want after, should they decide to move on from Deshaun? There's a whole lot of things that would need unraveling and unpicking before I would feel comfortable naming any of those 5 guys we've just talked about as the clear QB1. That said, it's always worth looking at finding trustworthy people and names in the industry that you trust. One person whose work I trust greatly is Kyle Krabs at Grinding the Tape on X. He has taken up a new job as the lead NFL draft content creator for the 33rd team. And he's just recently updated a big board. And if I give you his top 5 QB prospects in order, that'll give you an idea of maybe where more prominent people in the scouting industry are as well. He's got Cam Ward, number 1 amongst his QBs at the moment, number 14 overall. Carson Beck at 2, then Shedeur Sanders, then Jalen Milroe. Before a number 5 that isn't Quinn Ewers, he's got Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback. Nussmeier is someone I need to do some more work on. I'll be completely honest. There's no point in me telling you I'm high on him, I'm low on him, when I haven't watched enough in depth. So that's one of my jobs, to go away, look at the All-22 and come back to you with what I see on Garrett Nussmeier and whether I'm there as well. Last thing on these QBs, there are a couple of big games this weekend, including Alabama versus Tennessee. Massive game from a Devy perspective. You've got someone that we're going to talk about next, on the Tennessee side of things, Jalen Milroe at Alabama. You've also got Georgia versus Texas. That is a monster of a college football game. And again, that will see Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck go head-to-head and lead those 2 juggernauts. So, Let's move on then. Things we thought we knew in 2026. We thought that Zachariah Branch and Nico Iamaleava would headline a strong 2026 class. So let's talk about those two guys to start off with, and then let's have a look more generally at some of those 2026 prospects that are probably sitting on your Devy rosters with a little kind of mid-season review for how they are doing. After an explosive freshman campaign, Zachariah Branch was a first-round Devy pick this offseason. Absolutely no doubt about it. Usually one of the first two non-2025 prospects drafted at the wide receiver position. Obviously Jeremiah Smith often being the other. More on him a little later. But through 6 weeks of college football, Zachariah Branch really hasn't taken off how we'd hoped. There's no point in beating around the bush. It's been really, really disappointing. 233 yards through 6 games is not what we expected nor wanted from a guy who was the number one player in his recruiting class in 2023. Nationally, the number one recruited wide receiver, and right now averaging less than 40 yards per game. Just not what we expected, not what we wanted, and is a massive hit for his Devy stock. Like, let's be honest. Like, I mentioned him as a stock down player on last week's social media post. Is it usage? His ADOT has decreased every week of the season. But man, like a total of 5 receptions for 16 yards over the last 2 weeks of college football gameplay. Minnesota and Penn State. He went for 10 yards against Minnesota, 6 against Penn State. 6 yards for a guy that was expected to be a wide receiver, one for his program and one of the most dominant kind of impact players in college football in the entire country. So yeah, look, it's disappointing on Branch. Who knows? Like, we know that he's lightning in a bottle. We know he can create something from nothing. Maybe it's scheme. Maybe it's the fact that Miller Moss isn't kind of utilizing his skill set correctly, and that the USC passing game is asking him to do things that aren't his strong suit. Who knows? Who knows? But right now, it's got to be said, like, his Devy stock has taken a bit of a pummel in this last few weeks for sure. Which brings me on to the next guy I've headlined here, in Nico Iamaleava. Look, I love Nico. I have shares of Nico in a couple of different leagues. And it's just safe to say right now, look, we're not out on Nico. Let's just say there's been growing pains as he learns on the job. He has looked excellent against lesser opposition. But now through 6 weeks, he's played 4 Power 4 opposition. And in those games, he's got a 3-6 touchdown to interception ratio. So that's twice as many interceptions as he's got touchdowns, and 3 fumbles. It's not great. It's looked patchy at times. The decision making hasn't always looked great. Look, we know he's talented. We know he's got the tools. We know physically 6'6", that tall, lean frame. We've seen the throws that he can make. I'm certainly not out on him, but it just is worth mentioning. Maybe as time goes on, he's not the surefire QB1 or QB2 that we thought. Again, Tennessee are an exciting, high-octane, vertical offense under Josh Heupel, but how does that translate for a QB going into the NFL? It's a gimmicky offense. It's quick, get the ball out, first read. He's not asked to do a lot of things that NFL quarterbacks are asked to do. And you've always got to consider, will this hurt him long-term from an NFL evaluation perspective? So again, there you go. 2 big name guys that were drafted highly this offseason in your Devy drafts, who've perhaps so far not lived up to the expectation. And this just feels like a doom and gloom segment for that 2026 class, because another one big things were expected of was Ohio State receiver and one of Jack's favorites, a certain Carnell Tate. The former IMG Academy receiver, 15 receptions, 232 yards. The talent is there for sure. We know that. But the snaps and the looks just aren't at the moment. He's found himself trapped behind all-world freshman Jeremiah Smith, and the return of Emeka Egbuka, who has been dominant as that kind of move piece and slot receiver in the Buckeyes offense. Add to the fact that they've got two excellent running backs who can do their share of passing work as well in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, and it has left Carnell Tate a little bit as the odd man out. Obviously, Egbuka will go into the 2025 NFL draft, which means Carnell Tate may well see an increase in snaps next year. But right now, it's got to be said, we were expecting a step up. We thought he was going to be the guy to lock in one of those outside positions. It hasn't happened so far, which has got to be another kind of stock down for this 2026 class. The next guy I want to talk about, again, while we're talking stock down, has got to be Oklahoma quarterback Jackson Arnold. Really perceived as a breakout candidate again this season. He isn't even starting at the moment for Oklahoma, benched in favor of a true freshman because of worrying inconsistent play. Guys, this one could be a Devy stock burn. If he doesn't get the job back before the end of the season, look for him to test the portal. Maybe that is where your hope lies, but there's a player who has got to show significant growth. Another one, Kevin Concepcion, NC State Wolfpack receiver, a guy that we as a pod are very high on. We watched his freshman tape and absolutely loved it from last season. Just questions about his usage, man. Questions about how he's been used in that system. No game above 50 yards since week 0. Worryingly low ADOT. That again is decreased massively on his freshman season. And look, again, the talent is there. The talent is there for sure. But right now, in terms of the second year burst we were expecting to see, maybe we haven't just yet. Feels a little bit harsh to talk about Eugene Wilson as a stock down in this section as well. Injuries have curtailed his season to date. He was back in the lineup for Florida this week and played well. And I would expect him to kind of pick up where he's left off. So we can keep that one as a positive. What I do want to talk about then is if these guys are all stocked down, like where's the hope in that 2026 class? I'll be honest, from a dynasty perspective, I've made a couple of moves recently in non-Devy leagues and sold 2026 firsts because I felt like I could get more for them in terms of buying either slightly depreciated assets as they were now or bulked up on 2025 picks by getting rid of some of that 2026 capital that I had. But it is not all lost. The age of NIL and the transfer portal means that if some of these guys aren't getting the look they want as a 2025 prospect, maybe they will come back for the 2025 college season and try out for the 2026 NFL draft class. Guys, I want to talk about then in that section. 3 QBs, 3 really highly rated QBs coming into their collegiate careers. That's Cade Klubnik, Connor Weigman, and Drew Aller. At times, we've given all 3 of these guys pelters since we began this show all the way back in January. But it is absolutely worth mentioning. Like I said again in this week's Stock Up, Stock Down post on X, these are young men, and these young men are thrust into the limelight and expected to be superb straight away. They will develop at different times. We've seen it this year in Cade Klubnik. Cade Klubnik, as a 2025 draft prospect, too far behind now, in my opinion. But he's looking really, really likely to come back to Clemson next year. And right now, with Nico dropping, with Arch Manning looking like he might come back for 2027 and do the same as some of these guys and kind of build up a real resume, there's every possibility that if Cade Klubnik carries on the upward trajectory he's been playing with over this last kind of 3, 4, 5 weeks, why can't he be QB1 in the 2026 class? Why not Cade Klubnik? Again, Connor Weigman, I said all the way along, it blew my mind that people were talking about him as the potential 2025 QB1, given the amount of football he'd missed because of injury. Then the scheme changed this year. I was very critical of him earlier in the season and kind of what he'd not shown us. He's sat, he's got healthy, he was back in the lineup this week in week 6 and looked really good. A big improvement from what we'd seen earlier on in the year. Drew Aller, physically all the tools are there. There is a big improvement this year in his passing decision making, and he's looking good. But maybe right now he's not getting the love that he would want as a top potential QB prospect. So again, why doesn't he come back in 2025 and try for the 2026 NFL draft? I really think these guys are all candidates to come back. And as you've seen in that kind of piece that I've done over the last couple of years, first identifying Jaden Daniels using the Bill Parcells metrics, and then this year identifying Cam Ward. Again, look, we've not mentioned Jackson Dart tonight, but Jackson Dart is another one who chose to come back for his senior season to play football and has probably boosted his draft stock and looks a lot better prospect for ticking off some of those kind of experience-based categories. I really do believe Klubnik, Weigman, Aller are all in that category and in that bucket to step up and maybe make that jump like the two guys I've just mentioned. There's also a couple of names that weren't on our watch list. We'll be completely honest. Like, I'm not really going to talk about the running back class in terms of stock down because the injury to CJ Baxter, we know, I've said before, Alabama guys have to wait their turn. Jam Miller's the guy right now, whilst Justice Haynes painfully sits and waits. But there are a couple of names that I do want to discuss as stock up and people to put on your watch list if they're not already. Eli Holstein, potato. QB at Pitt, transfer from Alabama, really looking like a good pocket passer, putting up some big numbers, playing well, and a guy who's really kind of thrust himself into the limelight. He transferred out of Bama after for a second consecutive season, not seeing a way through to get past Jalen Milroe. Again, we said it before when we were talking about Quinn Ewers transferring from Texas. The time that Quinn Ewers spent sat behind CJ Stroud wasn't a waste. It wasn't a waste during that time. He was learning. He was learning on the job without the pressure of being thrust into performance. And it'll be the same for Eli Holstein. Sitting in that room behind Jalen Milroe will have done him the world of good. And now he's out and making a name for himself and looking like a player you should keep your eye on, particularly when some of your QB prospects, if you think about guys that were drafted for that 2026 class, we're already saying get out on Jackson Arnold. We're saying, Malachi Coleman, Dante Moore. These guys are nowhere near the field and not looking like lucrative Devy assets anymore. So take a flyer on a guy like Eli Holstein. Why not? And then, again, right now, you've got to ask the question, is the RB1 in this class Jeremiah Love? Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame is absolutely tearing it up right now. And he's maybe a name that is still available. Have a look. Have a look, because next year could well be the year that he goes and says, you know what, my stock's not going to get any higher. CJ Baxter will be back from injury. Justice Haynes will hopefully finally be the guy at Alabama. But Jeremiah Love is playing and playing well now. Draft eligible next year. Keep an eye on him. All right, I'm just going to ask you the question, could he be RB1 in this class? So there you go. A real mixed bag for that 2026 class. We thought Zachariah Branch and Nico Iamaleava were going to be the headliners. Perhaps not. Perhaps we were wrong on that one. Okay. Next one. Next thing we thought. Yeah, this freshman class is good, but freshmen have to wait for their opportunities. Okay. Well, they are proving us wrong. Those elite prospects that we broke down for you last offseason have hit the ground running. From a running back perspective, we have had meaningful contributions from freshman running backs like Jarrett Gibson at Texas, Taylor Tatum at Oklahoma, Nate Frazier at Georgia, my guy Nate Frazier. But the jewel in the crown, all right, might just be one that we didn't talk about, and that's Caden Durham at LSU. what a start that young man has made. He is looking dynamic, electric as a runner. He's putting up massive numbers in that LSU offense. And yeah, maybe we missed. I mean, we talked about Kedron Young. We talked about the guys who have gone into Alabama. Like, maybe we missed the best of the lot in Caden Durham. So yeah, if you don't know that name, keep an eye on him. Check for him in your drafts next off season, because he's going to be bananas. All right, mark it now. Look, we all knew Jeremiah Smith was a freak. Let's talk wide receivers. Okay, we all knew Jeremiah Smith was a freak. But in the history of the Ohio Buckeyes program, no freshman wide receiver had ever broken 500 yards. So what did we expect from Jeremiah Smith? You know, the honest answer is, I think we all knew when we saw him it was going to be good, but how much were we going to see him? Besides, Egbuka was healthy again. Carnell Tate was looking like a guy to pinch one of those outside roles. There's Brandon Inniss there as well, who we were thinking could step up. All right. Was Jeremiah Smith going to get smattered into the offense where we're going to see him here and there, a couple of wow catches and that be that? Well, look, we're 6 weeks in, and he is now already the first ever freshman Ohio State Buckeye wide receiver to eclipse 500 yards. He's already met that mark. He's on 5.33 at the moment, I believe, off the top of my head. And he's on pace then to have over 1,000 yards. That is unprecedented for a wide receiver at Ohio State. And he looks every bit as good as some of those huddle highlights we saw of his high school film. Look, he's now doing this to college guys. We're at 6'3", like, he's a grown man. And the same way he bullied high school kids, he's bullying elite collegiate receivers. And he's going to go to the league in 2027, I'm sure, and absolutely blow up there as well. He is every bit as good as advertised. So why did he have to wait for an opportunity? Maybe we were silly to think that he would have to wait for an opportunity. I think what we didn't realize, though, was that there's going to be another wide receiver pushing him every step of the way in Alabama's Ryan Williams. Now, look, Ryan Williams through 6 games actually has more yards than Jeremiah Smith. He's up at 576 yards across those 6 games. But there have been more peaks and troughs in terms of consistent production. Jeremiah Smith is averaging around 90 yards a game, and it doesn't really deviate too much from there, too high, too low. He's never really been below 75 yards, never been above 100. Whereas Ryan Williams has had a 130-plus yard game, a 170-yard-plus game against Georgia, no less. Smattered in with a couple of 32 yards this last week against South Carolina, where he had four receptions for 32 yards. Now, there were good receptions, chain-moving receptions, but perhaps not what we thought of him as that kind of field-stretching high flyer. Look, these two guys are going to be joined at the hip. I think it's really cool to see via social media that they know they're going to be in it together. Ryan Williams mentioned that they text back and forth and show nothing but respect for each other. That kind of healthy competition, pushing each other to be the best. They're at 2 of the biggest programs in the country, doing big things. They're always going to be measured against one another. I think we always knew Jeremiah Smith was going to be the 1A. I don't think we knew there was going to be an immediate 1B, but Ryan Williams looks like that guy. From the QB perspective, we've got Dylan Raiola starting every week and looking solid for Nebraska. DJ Lagway has showed promise when he started. Obviously, he filled in for Graham Mertz when he was out with a concussion earlier in the season, and still gets sprinkled in for a series here, a series there in the Florida game script. I thought it was interesting that with the game on the line last weekend, they trusted Lagway with the series down near the down in the red zone to score the touchdown that took the game to overtime. So Lagway, again, showing promise. There's been some bumps in the road, as you'd expect for a true freshman. A couple of sacks he's taken that he'd probably want back. And the interceptions haven't always looked pretty, but you can see the talent. You can see the talent is there. So look, we knew this class was good. We knew there were good players coming in to the collegiate ranks, and there was a reason we were so high in drafting some of these guys. But I think we all expected they would have to wait, and they're just showing me and showing us if they're young enough, it doesn't matter as long as they are good enough. Okay, so props to that 2027 class and those freshmen. The final thing I want to talk about, and I'm mainly going to get away with it because Jack isn't here to stop me. Okay, I want to talk about the tight end position, and more importantly, the 2025 draft class at tight end, because I think it is deeper than we have let on. I think in the summer, we all thought that we knew that Colston Loveland was a lock as the tight end one. The Michigan tight end was a major component and a major cog in the national championship winning offense. And I think it was completely safe to assume that he was going to be the guy. I saw him drafted in a lot of leagues this offseason, with people expecting him to be the surefire, leaps and bounds number one guy. But there are guys who are starting to emerge and show real potential. And I just want to draw your attention to some of those names if you are not already aware. And the first one I want to talk about is Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is the reason that Drew Aller's passing statistics have taken the jump and raise that they have. He is currently their leading player in the passing game and receiving game, and he is looking like a dynamic prospect, a move piece around the offense. He can catch passes, but right now, he can block, but right now he is catching passes at an absurd rate. Not only that, he's throwing passes too. They're using him in the Wildcat. He's scoring touchdowns as a passer, a runner, and a receiver. He had 17, yes, not targets, 17 receptions this last week. That is unbelievable production for a guy who is likely available in your leagues. This is the type of guy you stash those depleted rookie draft picks for. If you're in a combined draft and you're playing a tight end premium league, you want to be considering him over some of those 2028 recruits and over some of the other names that will be available, because he's going to end up on an NFL roster next year and make an immediate impact. You've got Mason Taylor, LSU tight end, who has been was probably frustratingly underused last year, whilst the passing game ran through Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. But this year, with more passing to go around, with Nussmeier at the helm, Mason Taylor is seeing more looks and showing that kind of breakout we thought that might have come last year. He's kind of bubbling on the verge of it. It's not quite happened yet, but he's not far away. I genuinely think he's a type of guy that's going to be a better pro than collegiate player because he is a jack of all trades. He blocks well. He runs good routes. He's a reliable tight end and a more traditional tight end, I think, than an out-and-out pass catcher. But look out for Mason Taylor as a likely kind of day 2 NFL draft pick. And again, he will be available unless you're in leagues with me, where I snatched him up with a 5th round draft pick last year. Okay. Then here's my bit of advice for you today. I want you to all go away and find the tape and watch my new guilty pleasure. Never did I think I would be speaking to you guys on a Devy podcast about a tight end from Bowling Green. Well, here we are. And I'm going to talk to you for a couple of minutes about Harold Fanning Jr. Harold Fanning Jr. is the most dynamic pass catching weapon playing tight end in the draft class this year. He is electric. So much fun to watch. He's a wide receiver playing tight end. He's got that kind of long, slim frame, but my God, is he fun to watch. He is just electric as a pass catching weapon. Doesn't offer a great deal as a blocker or in line, but when you catch passes like he does, it is absolutely fine. My God, he is exciting. Look, anything I say now isn't going to do his tape enough. He runs incredible routes for a tight end. He's quick, deceptively shifty. I love him. And if you haven't already drafted him, I really do think you need to. Consider it in those depleted rookie draft picks because, again, I guarantee you is available. I don't even think I play in a couple of 10-round annual Devy drafts. I don't even think he's taken in those where anybody gets taken. Go and watch the tape. Thank me later. Keep him as our secret. All right. But know that if you draft him ahead of me in a draft, I will be fuming with you and I won't want to talk to you again. Other names to mention then. Jake Brinnenstall at Clemson, good all-round tight end prospect. Gunnar Helm at Texas. Texas are loaded all over the field, but right now he has emerged as their leading tight end. Perhaps surprisingly over Amari Niblack, who transferred from Alabama and was expected to be the guy for them. Other guys really high on, then you want to keep an eye on Oronde Gadsden at Syracuse. He's been a major part of Kyle McCord's resurgence. And again, pass catching mismatch. In college fantasy leagues at the moment, he's listed as a wide receiver / tight end, which again gives you that type of prospect that he is. So look, we all assumed that going into the season, Colston Loveland was a lock as the tight end one. He probably still is. He's likely the only guy that has been drafted in your leagues in this tight end class. Maybe Luke Lachey at Iowa, who would be a stock down guy for me right now. Maybe if you're in older league, Oscar Delp from Georgia. But right now, I think you're safe to say, I think we were right. I think Colston Loveland, will be the tight end one. But there are some emerging names to keep an eye on with those rookie draft picks, those depleted rookie picks. Okay. Cool. Right. There you go. Things we thought we knew. That leaves me then really just to talk about the upcoming game slates over the next couple of weeks of college football. Just wanted to give you a couple of games to keep an eye on in week 8. Okay, so week 8, I already mentioned we've got 2 massive SEC games. We've got Alabama at Tennessee. From a 2025 perspective, Alabama obviously showpiecing quarterback Jalen Milroe. But then there's some interesting pieces in other positions on both sides of the ball. It's always a good opportunity to watch Ryan Williams. The 2025 receiver at Alabama, Jeremy Bernard, is still well worth a watch as a kind of later, kind of mid-round pick. From a Tennessee perspective, it's a good chance to put eyes on Nico. I gave you some worrying stats about his play against Power 4 schools so far this year. Can he buck that trend against the Crimson Tide? Be interesting to watch. I like a couple of Tennessee's guys. We know Dylan Sampson's an interesting piece to watch, but keep an eye on Deontay Thornton, wide receiver at Tennessee, as a sleeper in this 2025 class that people are speaking about. And then further down the line, Chris Brazzell, 2026 wide receiver, well worth keeping an eye on. There's also Georgia versus Texas. Look, that game is stacked with talent. It would be far too much for me to talk to you about each player. Quinn Ewers looks likely to get the start for Texas. Carson Beck's there at Georgia. We know there are a plethora of players that you want to keep an eye on in that one. Who comes out on top will be massive in terms of the APP polling in that one as well. The other one I want to talk about is Miami at Louisville. Obviously, Cam Ward is a name to keep an eye on. But look, I am a sucker right now for his 2025 receiver. And he's kind of go-to guy in the passing game, Xavier Restrepo. Dirty work, inline slot receiver. does all the unpleasant stuff really, really well. And he's the type of guy who will make, if you like route running, if Vlad McConkey was what got you excited in this last draft class, keep an eye on Xavier Restrepo in that Miami-Louisville game. From a Louisville perspective, all right, we keep mentioning it via social media, but if you are holding shares of Ja'Cory Brooks, the one-time Alabama receiver, he is on an upward trajectory right now. He transferred out of Bama, and we thought his Devy stock was dead. There is very much a pulse in that Devy stock. Ja'Cory Brooks is playing incredibly well and is an ascending talent right now. Looking ahead to week 9, because we probably won't see you again before then. Mizzou travel to Alabama. Again, that's an opportunity to look at Luther Burden against an elite SEC defense. LSU and Texas A&M. LSU, I've said I need to watch more Garrett Nussmeier. That is my homework for the next couple of weeks. Traveling to Texas A&M will be a real test for him. Texas A&M's defense is stingy, man. And it'll be really interesting to see how he does, how Kyron Lacey does. Another opportunity to get eyes on Caden Durham. Then finally, I'm not just shouting it out for Jack, but Nebraska traveled to Ohio State in week 9. Okay, what a good opportunity to watch how Dylan Raiola fares against an elite defense. How does he look against a defense that contains defensive backs like Denzel Burke, a potential day 1, day 2 corner in the 2025 class, and an elite safety prospect like Caleb Downs. It'll be interesting to see how Dylan Raiola fares. On the Ohio State side of things as well, will Emeka Egbuka stay hot? What's that going to do for his 2025 stock? And so on and so forth. That just leaves me to say thank you for sticking with us, or sticking with me tonight and listening to me tell you my thoughts and opinions on the things we thought we knew. Every off-season, there are storylines that we follow. How they play out and unfold in real time has repercussions and ramifications for whether we keep, whether we sell, whether we look to get out on players, whether the stock we want. Are we going to look to acquire draft picks? Are we going to look to get rid of draft picks? Hopefully, some of the things I've touched on this evening will help you in that kind of thought process. That just leaves me to thank you for tuning in and follow it, and ask you again to make sure you follow and subscribe to us on X and YouTube. You can find us on X at Wildcard Devy. Please, please, please feel free to drop in, talk to us. We love to talk back and interact with you. The main account, you can follow the main Fantasy Wildcard account on X and also over on YouTube, where all of our streams get posted. Check out the fantastic new look DFS show. Check out Paul, Hannah, and Lewis with the Rewind show. Okay. Check out the main guys, Mags, Kev, Ali. Okay, over on the Dynasty show. We have got you covered for all of your fantasy needs. Okay. In the meantime, thanks for checking us out and keep it Devy.